I haven't seen that consent button before. Hello.
Hello, everyone. There's a consent button.
Yeah, it's like when you sign on, you consent to be recorded.
Oh, well, there you go. I think they've started announcing when things are getting recorded. I think they're getting more serious about the recording.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Amanda, I see your mini me behind you.
She's hard to miss.
Awesome.
How you doing, Vadim?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Adam.
Vadim, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah. Good to see you. Doing great. It's a beautiful night in Kentucky.
Awesome.
Interesting.
So, Adam, do you mind giving us the order we're going to go in? And I'll type it into.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start with Cave Hill.
Okay.
And then we're going to go High Gold. And then we're going to go Boxer Grail. And then we're going to go to the gin, the smoked gin. And then we're going to finish with Derringer.
Wow. Would not have guessed that order, but anyway. All right.
I just think it's super cool he has this studio. I think this is the first one where the person with us has a full studio to himself.
Oh, he's at the distillery as far as I know.
Looks like he is. Yeah, that's a distillery.
This is not a background. This is actually, I am actually here.
You should have lied and just said it's the most high-tech virtual background of all time.
You know, I early on in the pandemic, when I kind of started developing the virtual tasting program, I sort of messed around with using virtual backgrounds so that we could do them from home. And it looked terrible. It was so cheesy. It was awful. And I said, you know what? No one else is at. It's just us and the distillers. So I was still, even during all through the pandemic, I was coming to the distillery every day, even though we were closed, just doing them from here. Because why not? Why not? Look at this place. You'll love this place. You'll see what I mean when we walk through here.
How many lights do you have on you?
What's that?
Do you have any lights on you? Dedicated like ring lights?
No.
Good.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's just the space is well lit here. As we get down the main hallway, I think they're on. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, got some more lights behind me, but everything's pretty well lit. There might be a couple places where I kind of disappear in a dark hole or something, but I'll come out the other side, I promise.
You know, I do feel personally attacked with my cheesy background.
Yours is not too bad. I was trying to use like stills from the distillery, like the still or the atrium or you know, barrels behind us, like from our rick house. And every time it just, I don't know, it just never translated well. It never looked well. And I'm like, why not just do it from the distillery? It made sense.
For sure. All right. Well, look, I think we have most people here. A few people are going to trickle in, but I'm just going to get us going. The fun banter at the beginning is going to be part of the recording. I'm not going to stop and start. So we'll just get started. We're excited to welcome Adam Edwards with the Rabbit Hole Distillery. This is a distillery that a few of our members have asked about, and we're excited to delve into and check out. We're going to be tasting all 4 of your bourbons and your bespoke gin today. So pretty excited about that. We finally have David Donahue back, our loving president. You want to say a couple of words? We're happy to see you again.
I'd be very happy to, Vadim. Thank you as always for all the wonderful work that you put into bringing us these virtual tastings. Many of us who have heard me kind of do this kind of introduction know that we appreciate all the behind the scenes efforts that goes into coordinating, talking, emailing, communicating, scheduling that we don't see, but we really do truly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Adam, we're excited to jump into the rabbit hole and find out more about this wonderful expression. I was doing a little bit of research before this, before the tasting, and I find that the founder has, I want to hear more about him. I read the introduction that Vadim posted on our Facebook page. So it is truly an interesting kind of sort of development that he put into this. And when I was going onto the Facebook page, I found the fact that this artwork, I think, is in the distillery with the raised fist. I think that's there. So I really applaud. I think his efforts are what he's doing is fantastic. So looking forward to this. Thank you very much. And welcome to everybody. It's great to see you all again.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah, welcome to all our regulars. Welcome to a few new faces today. Anyone who's joining us for the first time, just a couple of small housekeeping things. You're welcome to participate. We encourage it. Ask questions, chat. We're going to use polls. This is super interactive. We do ask that we're respectful of each other. So unless you're speaking, keep yourself on mute. If you do unmute yourself and I don't see you actively speaking, I will help mute you. So please don't be offended. Feel free to message me if I went out of turn and muted you when you're about to say something. But please share your tasting notes, ask questions, get nerdy. That's why we're here. This is not a one-way mirror. You know, we're here to participate. This is a discussion. But without further ado, with that said, I'm going to pass it over to Adam. It's your show. I'm here just to back you up, and we're excited to taste this. Cheers.
Thank you all so much. Those were excellent introductions. I hope that I can live up to them. Yeah, you know what? We're going to really dive into everything here. I mean, I've got 2 hours blocked out on my schedule. I know you do too. So like you said, we can get really nerdy. I can get bourbon nerdy with the best of them. So we're really going to dive in tonight. We'll get super into Kave's story, our founder, the artwork, the building, our process, everything. Just like Vadim said, you know, do me a favor, ask questions, put it in the chat, or if you feel comfortable enough, you can unmute yourself and interrupt me. I don't mind. It's go right ahead. Like, this is open forum. This is not a presentation. This is absolutely a conversation. So please don't be shy. Ask me anything. Before we really dive into this distillery, we're going to do something that is special to me. So like we said, we're going to start with Cave Hill tonight. And in fact, we're going to start with Cave Hill right now before we even get into the distillery, because I feel like you can learn a lot about somebody by asking what they do for a living or what their hobbies are or what their favorite color is, but you don't really know somebody until you have that first drink with them, right? That's the best way to get started. So pour yourself up some Cave Hill and cheers, everybody. It's a tough job I got. It's tough, you know, it's tough living this life sometimes. So that is Cave Hill. That is a 4-grain triple malt bourbon. That is our flagship. It is our best seller across the country, and it is the one that started it all. Our distillery was founded in 2012 by a guy named Kaveh Zamanian. And Kaveh is a very interesting fellow. He was actually a psychologist for 25 years before he became a bourbon distiller, which is like not your normal route to being a bourbon distiller. He was actually living in Chicago, and he met a girl from Louisville named Heather, and she turned him into a bourbon drinker and like drastically overshot the mark. They moved down here to Louisville, and he fell in love with the city, and he fell in love with bourbon because those two things go hand in hand. He actually started making bourbon in a little 5-gallon still, and just was messing around with different mash bills, and finally kind of settled on something that he liked. He started by brewing beer. Some of his brewer friends use a lot of honey malt, and so he wanted to use a honey malt in his whiskey. And so he started making this whiskey and just give it to friends and family. And some of the samples made their way into the hands of people in the industry, because here in Louisville, we try to act like we're a big city, but we all know each other. It's kind of a small town. So, you know, people like Larry Ebersold, who was the master distiller for Seagram's, or otherwise known as LDI or MGP, and Jimmy Russell, and you know, a little guy named Julian Van Winkle. They all kind of got their hands on this, and they cornered Kaveh a few different times around Louisville, kept asking where he was getting it. And he kept telling them, I'm just making it myself. And Larry especially was so enamored with this. He said, you know, this is really interesting. It's unlike anything else on the market. You know, I think that you could make a run at it. You should try and open a bourbon distillery. So we're looking at, you know, late 2000s. Kaveh had no problem getting investors to invest in a bourbon distillery in the late 2000s. Everybody was basically knocking his door down. And so we got the investors together, and he looked at his wife, Heather, and he said, honey, let's do it. Let's sell the practice. They were both practicing down here in Louisville as psychologists. Let's mortgage the house and let's build a bourbon distillery. And she said, you know, this obsession of yours, Kaveh, is going to lead the family down the rabbit hole, and then there's no going back. And he loved that name. He loved that turn of phrase. And so he wanted to use that as the name of his distillery. But even more important is that phrase, there's no going back. And you can just see the beginning of that phrase all the way down this main hallway we're about to go down. Because it really, you know, it seems like you just see that and it's like, oh, there's no going back once you discover rabbit hole. But it's a little bit more once you discover your passion. You can't imagine going back to what you did before. And we all feel that way in this building. Now, the building itself used to be an old tire factory, believe it or not. I'm from Louisville, and I'm going to pick up my handy dandy stand here that also turns into a selfie stick. What is my life when I am using a selfie stick every day? I'll tell you, pretty good at it too. I'm from Louisville, so I remember the building that used to stand in the spot. It was an old tire factory. And Doug Pearson is a great architect out of North Carolina, and Kaveh discovered him from this building that he built right down the street. And so he said, that's the guy I want to build this distillery. We knocked the building down and he built straight up. He built straight up. In fact, we did not increase the footprint at all. We're only about 55,000 square feet. But last year we did over 21,000 barrels. It's about 1.5 million gallons. So we actually make more bourbon per square foot than any distillery in the country. Now, that Cave Hill is really the bottle that built this distillery. That was the flagship. And what's so amazing about Cave Hill, I think I see some people commenting that it's very spicy and doesn't have a lot of rye. Believe it or not, there's no rye in Cave Hill. You know, a lot of times 4 grains, they use wheat and rye. There is no rye in this at all. And so if you look at the mash bill, in fact, if you ever go and look at one of these bottles, we put the mash bill right on that label. This is 70% corn and then 10% each of malted wheat, malted barley, and honey malted barley. And even though this has malted wheat in there, I personally, and Kaveh doesn't, we don't really consider this like a wheated bourbon, a wheater. That malted wheat, that's really the tertiary grain. That's really just there for texture. The honey malt is truly the secondary or flavoring or small grain on this. And when you smell it, you get that honey in there. The spice itself is really coming from the barrels. It's very much like baking spices, like clove, allspice, cinnamon. We use these barrels from Kelvin that are toasted and charred, so not just charred, but they're toasted first over oak fires, and it really brings out the spicy characteristic of that barrel. So even though this has no rye in it, I feel like it has a great amount of spice in it. And keep that in mind, because after I walk through this building, we get upstairs and we taste the next bourbon, which is High Gold, which is a high rye bourbon. It is really, really going to change. It's going to be much different. Malted wheat, malted barley, and honey malted barley. So they'll take that malted barley, and when they dry it, they'll kiln dry it, and it starts to toast a little bit, and it gets a honey color and also a little bit of a honey flavor. You can keep going and make like chocolate malts. You can make caramel malts. You can make espresso malts, coffee malts. It's just the more you toast it, it'll give you some of those flavors too. Now this main hallway, I like to show this off. This is kind of cool. There's these graphics all the way up and down this hallway here, and they're the actual cut sheets from the building, the distillery. So it's kind of like a little blueprint of the distillery. It shows every single thing that we do, all the way from grain to glass. Like Kaveh says, from soup to nuts. I always like when he says that, from soup to nuts. So everything we show in these breakfasts is what we do here in this distillery. We do it all here. The only thing we don't do in this distillery on site, we don't age here. We even bottle. You can see this is our bottling line. It moves about 20, 25 bottles a minute. But we don't age here. Aging takes place about 40 minutes away. And we have 2 warehouses built and filled. The third one is being built right now. It should be done in about 2 months. They're all steel warehouses. They're kind of dark gray like this. In the winter, they'll kind of retain some of the sun's heat and keep aging so they don't rest completely. This is kind of cool. I like this. I always like showing this off. This is a really neat way to show how the grain moves. So if you look, this is our mill right here. It's called a cage mill. It's built by a company here in Louisville called Stedman. They're actually a gravel crushing company. We used to have a roller mill. We started with a roller mill, And after about 5 or 6 months, we fired the roller mill. It was breaking down all the time. It was sitting through whole grains. That's terrible for fermentation and distillation, especially the cooking part. So we got rid of that roller mill and we installed this cage mill. Stedman, like I said, they're a gravel crushing company. So they built us a mill that could handle gravel. So, it's going to handle grain just fine. It mills that grain down and then it sends it under these pipes right here across to the other side of the building. So over here, where I was just showing you, that's the manual labor. And we'll dive in there here in a minute, all the barreling and grains and bottling. This is the chemistry on this side. So these pipes are going to take that milled grain over and up to a mash cooker where we'll, cook it down, and it just comes right back down here and picks it up. And let me see if I can give you a good look at this thing. Just a cool way to show how you move the grain. You can kind of see how that dragger is built. It's got a chain that runs through there, and it pulls these white discs along. It actually pulls the grain along. And I'll even show you kind of a close look at our mill here. It's an amazing. You can look up like on YouTube some 3D renderings of how a cage mill works. It's pretty neat, pretty cool, and it is a workhorse. It does a great job for us. I think it is an amazing facility too. Wait till we really dive in here. You're gonna love what I'm about to show you. In fact, I'll tell you one really cool thing about virtual tours. So when I'm giving like a physical tour here, back when I was a tour guide, that's how I actually started. I started with Rabbit Hole about a month before they opened and wrote the tour script. And I was their lead tour guide for a while until last year when the world ended for hospitality last March, of course, pretty much everywhere. And so we shut the distillery down, and they wanted me to stay on and kind of do these virtual experiences. And I learned something really cool. So when you do a physical tour here, an on-site tour at Rabbit Hole, part of a public tour, I cannot take you in this room. Cannot take you in there. It's the barreling room. There's barrels everywhere. It's not safe. But when you're on my phone on the end of a selfie stick, guess what? We can totally go in there. So kind of a cool part of virtual tours. All right. Let's make sure they haven't fired me yet. My key card still work. Excellent. All right. So here we are in the barrel filling and dumping room. So right here is where we are filling these barrels. Now, I talked a little bit about these barrels before. They're Kelvin cooperage barrels. Kelvin cooperage is just in the south of Louisville. They're about 4 miles from here. They toast and char every single barrel. We love showing that off on this wall like this graphic. It's kind of cool with the barrels there. Always toasted and charred. So they'll start it around 500 degrees and let it sit there until the inside of the barrel actually combust. And that's how they know it goes from toasting to charring. Our first 3 whiskeys we're trying tonight, K-Phil, High Gold, and Boxer Grill, those are number 3 level char, and then Derringer is a level 4. Need a little bit more. But here is something really neat. You see right here it says natural wood fired barrels. Kelvin does not use a gas flame like every other cooperage out there. Just about every other cooperage out there. They actually build a wood fire underneath every single barrel, and that is how they toast and char every single barrel. It's much lengthier process. It takes about 16, 17 minutes for every single barrel to get done. But if any of you all in this group are you're grillers like me, gas is fine. Like I've got a smoker at home and it runs off the propane tank because that's pretty easy, to keep, if I'm doing a Boston butt for 12 hours, I need something that's going to give me a nice even temperature all the way through. But my grill is absolutely charcoal. It's absolutely charcoal because I think it gives better flavor. It's a richer, deeper flavor. It's the same thing for the barrels, right? Running them over oak fires instead of using a gas flame, it makes all the difference. Now, after the barrels are done aging off-site at our warehouses in it's Henry County, we'll bring them all right back here, and this is where we dump all the barrels. So it's just a big trough. We'll lift it up on this pneumatic lift here, roll it over, drill the bung out, keep rolling it, and then we're going to filter it just very simply through a parchment paper, kind of like a parchment paper, and then there's just a metal screen underneath. That's it. We don't do any chill filtering at Rabbit Hole Distillery, so there's not a chill plate under here. You can see we've got a little bit of this char left behind. In fact, I think there's like a huge barrel of it right here. I'm telling you what, if anybody has a smoker, this is the stuff you want to use in your smoker, is that barrel char. It's amazing. But that is it. We don't want to chill filter. We don't want to remove all the lipids and the oils. We don't want to remove all the esters. The esters are incredibly important for flavor and for texture as well. So we don't want to remove all that. I'll show you this. This is kind of cool. You see, let me use my selfie stick skills here to the max. Really get this out so you can kind of see how big these barrels are. These are obviously not bourbon barrels. These are Mizunara, Japanese oak barrels. So we just released a founder's collection on our second one, and it was a 15-year-old bourbon from some of Kabe's personal stocks that he finished. And these 3 barrels right here, which are Mizunara oak, for about a year. These 3 barrels over here, Kabe has taken high gold distillate, not barreled, just high gold distillate, proofed it down to 110 proof, and then put it in these Mizunara oak. He's going to let it sit there for, he says 15 years. We'll see. I don't know if we'll be able to be patient enough. We might pull it in 10 years. We'll see what happens. This Mizunara
Adam,
oak.
is there any expression with Mizunara that's on the market in the next couple years?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one right now. It's that founder's collection that'll be out. So it's out. It released last month. It's not our distillate. So Kabe basically, he collects barrels from other distilleries before he opened up Rabbit Hole, and he just bought a bunch of barrels. And so he took 7 of those barrels that were about 15 years old and threw them in those Mizunara oak and aged them for another year in that Mizunara oak. So that's on the shelf right now. It's pretty rare. I think only something like 1,200 barrels actually made it out. As for the rest of everything, the Mizunara, it'll be a while. It'll probably be 10, 15 years before that high gold is done aging.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of
somebody was-
Mizunara finishing, so that's great to
Yeah.
hear that. Kabe's
It's
doing it.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's even just the year with that 15-year-old bourbon, it only slightly changed it, which is great. It's a 15-year-old bourbon. It's awesome. But yeah, it added sort of this sandalwood, pineapple, almost like an umami thing in the back. It was really good. It's very, very good. Yeah, it is. 1.5. Yeah, it's $1,500. One of the stranger meetings I've ever been in my life in this industry was when Kabe had to sell himself the barrels, because as an individual, he could not legally sell that to put it in another barrel and sell it, and put it in a bottle and sell it to consumers. He had to sell it to himself as Kabe, the CEO and founder of Rabbit Hole. And so I think he had to pay something like 30% tax on his own barrels that he'd already paid taxes every single year for aging. It's kind of a nightmare. So this is, we call this the barrel warehouse. It's not really our warehouse. This is just where we're staging barrels. You can see my buddy D3 back here driving the forklift. He's picking up some barrels that he just filled, putting them on the truck and taking them down to our warehouses, let them age. And then this other bay right here, we'll get another truck in there that has aged barrels in it from our warehouse. Just stage them back here until they're ready to be dumped and put in the bottles probably tomorrow morning. All right, let's see what we can see next. These are cool. Here, as I'm going up the stairs, I'll show these off too. Those are Mizunara. Not Mizunara. These are sherry butts right here. So let's see if I
Adam, we lost your sound. You muted yourself.
You would think that somebody named a digital brand ambassador would be flawless with technology, but unfortunately, not every day. Sorry about that. These are, I was saying, these are the sherry casks right here that we finished Darren's are in. And we'll usually just keep them here. It's only about a 6-month aging, finishing in those barrels. So we don't want to just put them on the truck, take them down to the warehouse. Also, they don't fit in our ricks. Only bourbon barrels actually fit in those ricks, not sherry butts. All right. Ooh, it's getting humid in Kentucky tonight. This is, we call this the tank room because, well, we have tanks. We're really brilliant how we name things. These are the gauging, processing, and bottling tanks. So this is where we're actually proofing the bourbon down before it goes into the barrels. In fact, that barrel filling station is pretty much right here underneath my feet. So we're right on top of that room. Comes off the doubler at about 138 proof. We take it down to 110 and fill those barrels. So we got a pretty low entry proof. That dump station is right here underneath my feet. So that pumps directly up into these tanks. These are our processing tanks. Now, everybody talks about small batch. It's not a legalized term, right? It doesn't really mean anything, but everybody tries to use it in good faith in the industry. We have incredibly small batches. We only do 15 barrels at a time because I will show you these tanks, these processing tanks. they will only hold about 15 barrels at a time. So it's kind of a chicken before the egg. Are we doing it just because the tanks are that big, or are we doing it because it allows us to taste each batch? We can make sure everything's good and make sure everything's consistent. A little bit of both. So it'll go into these processing tanks, and then it'll go into the bottling tanks right there. We'll proof it down to whatever the bottle proof is, 95, 93, wherever we're at on that product, just straight down to that bottling line. That bottling line we have, it's U-shaped, and it moves about 20, 25 bottles a minute. All right. Whew, I'm going to hurry across this breezeway, because if I don't, I'll lose. I'm moving from one router to the next, and I'll lose signal. There we go. All right. See some stuff coming through chat to make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, 15 barrel batches. Yeah, we are. Well, we're not distilling. I guess that's not entirely true. We're not distilling in 15 barrel batches because we can kind of keep going. We're bottling in 15 barrel batches, if that makes sense. All right. Yeah. Threaten the band. All right, make sure I have this. I'm just checking the chat, make sure. Okay, yeah. So we are now into the other side of the distillery here. And first thing I'm going to show you says bourbon is a verb. I love this phrase. I think it's a really cool phrase. The reason it says bourbon is a verb right here is because, ladies and gentlemen, this is the room where we bourbon. And at this point in night, it is so pretty in here. And in fact, I'm just going to shut my mouth for a second and let you just take this in and enjoy it without my voice. All right, so this, of course, is our column still. It is 46 feet, 8 inches tall, 24 inches in diameter, and it's got 19 plates in it. You can see it is rocking and rolling right now, turning that beer into new make. And of course, it is made by Vendome Copper and Brass Works. We are so lucky to be here in downtown Louisville in an area called Nulu, because Vendome is only about 4 blocks from us. So if anything ever goes wrong with the still, they're here in a jiff. And you know, if you ever come to Louisville, see if you can get somebody to take you on a tour at Vendome. Those people are masters of their craft. They make something like 95 or 96% of the country's copper stills. Everything is custom. They're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. Everything else we're doing here, of course, we're cooking and fermenting. So we've got 9 fermentation tanks in here. They're all 8,000 gallons each. They're all about 14 feet deep. We are actually building 3 more fermenters right out back there, expanding our production. We do, so let's see, I think we empty about 3 of these a day. So that gives us roughly 60 to 70 barrels a day, kind of depending on the grain. Once we have those other 3 online, that's going to get us pretty close to about 100 barrels a day. So we're really doing, you know, at that point, we'll be doing about 27,000 barrels a year. This is our cooker right here. In fact, you can see those pipes that we stepped over that bring the grains over. You can see where it brings that grain up over here and then drops it into that cooker. This cooker is also 8,000 gallons. So this is a 1-to-1 ratio with the fermenters. It takes 4 hours cook time in here. We're going to take that mash and drop it in one of these fermenters. It takes about 90 minutes to fill these up. Once we add the yeast, we're going to let it sit there for just about 72 hours. To turn my camera around, give you a good look at something pretty close to the end of day 2. Maybe early, or yeah, probably end of day 2. Maybe middle.
Adam, what kind of yeast do you use?
So the yeast that we're using comes from a place called Fermentus. It's actually the same type of yeast that Buffalo Trace uses. I thought was really cool. But even though it's the same type of yeast that Buffalo Trace uses, it doesn't give all the same flavors because we're definitely using different fermentation temps, different grains. We have not really dug into our yeast too much. That is something I discovered a few months ago. And so I've kind of taken it upon myself to really kind of figure out, you know, with diesel oils, flavors that it's giving, what kind of flavors our yeast are responsible for. So far, I've narrowed it down to things like green apple, pear, orange, and some tea flavors are coming through. There's a little bit of spice it brings as well. Ask me again in 2 months, and hopefully I'll have a better answer on all the flavors it's bringing, because it is a tough task figuring out your yeast. Everybody, I had no idea that yeast was so difficult to nail down, not just knowing where it comes from or strains, and you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember the actual name of the strain that we're using, but it's really hard to figure out everything that it's adding. It's kind of an amazing process, so I'm having a lot of fun with it. This is showing you just 8 hours difference here. All these tanks are 8 hours apart. So this one here, the bubbles are still fairly big. And you just give it 8 hours and it really breaks down and it starts kind of getting this skin on top here. We ferment 72 hours. When we put in the tanks, we get it down to about 67 degrees. We'll let it get up to right under 89. And then we'll bring it down to about 75, 74. That's pretty much where we're letting it sit for those 3 days. These are starting to get a little older. You can see this one starting to develop a thicker sort of cap on top. Sort of move across it. And then we'll take a look at one. Renil, is this one emptying right now? Nice. Check this out. There you go. This is the very, very end of it. You can see all the way down there. You can see the cooling coils down there. So Renil here is just using a hose, make sure everything pushed down there towards the bottom of the pipe. You ever down there before? You ever down there before? No, yeah. I get down there every day. Renil says he gets down the bottom of that thing every day. I don't believe it. So this one is pretty close. This one's probably around that 68-hour mark, somewhere around there, and it's really developed this sort of skin top, so the dead yeast cells, spent grains up there. And at this point, it'll be sitting about, 8 to 10% alcohol. This is a good one that just got filled up probably 6 hours ago. So not much going on here. But you give that another 8 hours. I love the difference. Just 8 hours later. It's all starting to really react. It's so cool. And if you really want to have fun in a distillery, depending on what your definition of fun is, you just like stand over a fermenter and you do that. Whew, man, that's CO2.
It'll knock you out.
It really will. It'll be a very interesting live stream here. Just a second, just me on the ground for a couple seconds. Oh man, this is our beer well. Here's another selfie stick moment for me. We're gonna reach this out and really show you how big this is. So we're taking all the beer, that one that's empty and that Renil was spraying down there, it's all emptying into here. And we're gonna kind of drip it, I guess is not the right word, push it through this really skinny pipe here. You can't just drop, 8,000 gallons of mash into it still, you'll overflow it. So you kind of got to do it slow. But you don't want this just sitting there doing nothing while you're doing that. It'll turn into a big bowl of oatmeal and plug up the pipes. So we've got this one, you can see it really churning in there. We've got a big agitator in there. Just sit there and constantly cycle it. So as it goes through, it doesn't get thick and plug up the pipes. Oh, here's a cool shot. Actually, let me get right over top. I gotta get up here. Now, you didn't expect to see a fat guy running on a live stream tonight, did you? All right, so. Renil, you just saw Renil cleaning out that mash tank, spraying it down. And he is putting his big tarp on top. What's gonna happen next? He's gonna start pumping steam through this. And that steam is basically gonna clean it out. So what's cooking in that big mash tank over there, it's gonna go into that tank next. And that's how we do it. That's exactly how it happens. That's how we rotate. Every 8 hours, we'll empty these out. So the next one in another 8 hours will be this one. And that will go through the still next. So what's going through the still right now, this first run, and you can see it coming out of our low wine spirit safe here. This is about 128 proof. It's good, not great. It's got a little cleaning up to do at this point. So we're going to take it through these pipes right here, all the way down to the bottom. You can see the big copper guy down there. That's our doubler. We're going to redistill that, bring it all the way back up here to this pipe, this condenser, this big tube, and it's going to come off that at about 138 proof. So that is our high wine. It's sitting right about 138. Now, like I said earlier, we're not going to put it in the barrels at 138. It's a terrible idea. If you put it in at 138, first of all, that's not bourbon, right? You got to bring it at 125 or lower. But even at 125, you let it age 4 or 5 years, man, it comes rocking and rolling out of there at like 140 proof. And 140 proof is great and everything, but our bottle strength is about 95. That's where we feel like our core products really shine, in between 90 and 100. So to get it from 140 all the way down to 95, you got to have a ton of water. And you're just destroying all those flavors. You're just thinning out all the flavors that you marry together in the barrel, right? So we add the water now. We bring it all the way down to 110, so that in a couple of years, it's only getting up to like 115. You don't have to add that much water to bring it down to 95. And then if we're going to do any cast strengths, 115, still very simple, really good flavor. So, I mean, think about that, right? Alcohol, ethanol doesn't really have flavor. I mean, it does. The flavor is burning, basically. The water is where the flavor is. The water is important. Whew, man, that steam, you kick that steam on. Got a little humid in here. So this is a cool angle. I'm all the way at the top of the distillery now. You can really see the layout of this room. This big spiral staircase that came up, see all the mash tanks down here. And I will tell you, I have been to, well, just about every distillery in Kentucky and quite a few outside of Kentucky. This is the only distillery that I've ever been to that you can get this close to the rectifying part of the still, all the way up here at the top. You can see the water pulling off that alcohol, falling to the bottom. All that's going to go all the way down to the bottom. You see, this is where we pump our beer in, and that the spent grains go all the way down to the bottom. And of course, we just cycle that out as you call it stillage or thin stillage or thick stillage, kind of depending on who's going to pick it up. Truckers come pick that up, and they use it for feed. There's farms here in Kentucky and Indiana. We'll hold about 5% of each one back, and that's our back set to make that sour mash. It's really cool. We did, so we've got I was talking about those founders collections. We've got another one coming out in the fall, and it's a 5 grain, and it's a double chocolate malt. There's 2 types of chocolate malt in that one, and it's really dark. I mean, when it's fermenting, it looks like cocoa. And we used the back set of that for the first couple cooks of our, I think it was Cahill or High Gold after that. And it was still really dark. And I thought we were still doing more of it when I came in the other day. Couldn't believe it. All right. We need Catherine Boxer Grill, please. Well, you know what? That was actually our first founders collection. In fact, sometimes I don't like to stand in this spot too much because I might lose reception, but that was our first founders collection right there. That was Boxer Grail. It was actually 6 years old. It was some of the first barrels that Cave laid down. And that is cast strength Boxer Grail. And it is absolutely phenomenal. And that was the second one we put out. That's the Mizunara cask right there. So that's a 15-year-old bourbon that's finished in those Mizunara casks for about a year. Those beautiful, beautiful bottles. That's a really cool piece. You were talking about this earlier. This is called Bridge Turn, I believe. It's a Glen Cano piece. And this is modeled after, is it Tommy Johnson's or no, Tommy Smith? Tommy Johnson? Yeah, Tommy Johnson. So it's the 1968 Olympics, Mexico City, Mexico. The thing about this kind of kills me. There's only one arm in here, which makes me feel like I don't know how mirrors work. Just one arm. Everything else is a reflection. And the way Glenn talks about this piece, it's like that one moment in time, a million people standing back to back with them. Such a cool piece. Love that. Now, we are moving into a part of the building called Overlook. You see Overlook at rabbitholedistillery.com because, of course, it overlooks the distillery. But as I walk in this room, which is our bar, you can kind of see, oh, man, we are having a beautiful night tonight. Can't go too far out this door, else I'll lose reception. But check that view out. That's really why we call it Overlook. A beautiful view of the city of Louisville right here. All right. Absolutely gorgeous room. Come enjoy a drink. We are opening to the public again. And I think it's June 22nd. Are all distilleries this nice? You know what? I have never been to, well, I don't know if I say that. Yeah, I've really never been to a distillery that I haven't liked because I'm just a big nerd. Like I'm sure a few of you all are as well. I really love going to distilleries. I find kind of beauty in all distilleries. But this is this is quite the building. This is quite the incredible building here. It really has great character, great beauty. So I don't know. I feel like I'm biased if I don't say. I guess I have to say yes because I work for Rabbit Hole. I don't know, but I feel like, all distilleries are beautiful. So now, before we dive into the rest of our tasting, I just want to take a moment, see if there are any other questions. I know there's been a lot going on in chat, so if I miss one, you can like unmute yourself and ask, or put it back in the chat. I'll see if I can grab it again. But if there are any questions about like the building, the production, anything like that, just let me know. And I don't BS anybody if I don't know the answer. This is like kind of rare. I know a lot about Rabbit Hole, but if I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. I'll leave my email out at the end of this, and you all can just bombard me with more questions if I miss something on this. So
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question, Adam. Why did they choose that arm? I mean, that's really an interesting bit of U.S. history, world history, and it's controversial.
Absolutely. So that really, I think for us, it's about inclusion and moving forward and social change. But I think it also had a little bit more of a meaning to Cave being such a fan of Louisville, because a lot of people will see that and they're like, oh, Muhammad Ali. And it's not Muhammad Ali, right? But it does kind of evoke that idea, that spirit of perseverance, of overcoming things, of being a kind of a social change agent, I guess. So I think that's really why Cave really fell in love with that piece. Now, I can't talk to why he put it right there in that spot. I don't think there's any deeper meaning to why it's right there in the spot at the beginning of walking into Overlook, other than it was like the perfect place to put it. The bottles next to it, there's a bunch of old Dusties from his collection he put next to it, some Prohibition bottles. So it looked really nice there. I think that was all aesthetic. So replacing the actual piece there, I don't know if I have a good answer for that. Maybe Cave does, maybe he doesn't. But that really, I think he just fell in love with that piece for that sort of reason. And at Rabbit Hole, we like to follow a tradition. I mean, we're making bourbon, which is a very kind of narrow box in terms of regulations. You have to do so many things just right to be called bourbon. But at the same time, I think we like to break outside that a little bit and push the industry forward a little bit, kind of do things our own way. So those sorts of things align. Good question. Hopefully I answered. Any other questions before we move on?
Yes, I had a question.
Yes.
So Cave, I think I read something that he was kind of experimenting with his own mash bills, and I know you mentioned the honey malted grain. How did, and I didn't read, maybe, and probably I didn't read that much, but how did he develop all the various mash bills? Did he kind of explore on his own? Was he sitting down as a new person into the business, talking to other people? How did he kind of develop all the various things that he's doing?
So a little bit of both, right? So I always like to say Cave's he has like a touch of that sort of mad scientist in him. He'll try all sorts of stuff. If it works out, it does. If it doesn't, oh well. Even now we devote about 5% of our production to just experimentation, which is quite a bit. But also Cave, I mean, I've done some things with Cave. I'm obviously very media forward. And every once in a while, I'm able to get Cave to kind of settle down for a little bit and answer some questions with me for like a podcast. And I've heard him kind of talk about that sort of thing. And he's like, listen, if you ask me about, I don't know, the real intricacies of barrel aging, he's like, I've got a pretty good handle on it, but I don't know everything. And that's why I surround myself with people that do. In the distillery itself, we don't even have a master distiller. We've got Cave, who's like the head whiskey maker. He's kind of the innovator. He's the guy saying, can we do this crazy thing? And then we've got a guy named Cameron Talley, who is the head of production. He was lead distiller at Wild Turkey and Brown Foreman for a number of years. And he's the guy that looks at Cave and goes, no, we can't do that. Or yes, we can. And here's why. So sort of the same thing when we started developing these mash bills. He really relied on some of those industry giants. Larry Ebersold, especially. Larry Ebersold is a huge mentor to Cave and to me. Anytime I don't get starstruck too much. I mean, you all live in Southern California, so you get to like, I've never been starstruck with like celebrities. It's just kind of normal people most of the time. And any celebrity I've ever met, just kind of a good time. But Larry is one of those people that I get like goosebumps when the guy walks in the building, because he is the father of like modern American rye whiskey. The guy is, he's a giant. And I think that he, if you look at Boxer Grail, That's a 95.5 rye. That's like MGP, famous rye mash bill. It's still ours. We didn't source that from MGP. We made this. We made it our own way. But you can see where Cave really said, "Hey, that's a great rye mash bill. I don't want to change that, in terms of ratio too much. Just doing the things like the special barrels we're using, the type of rye we're using, things like that, to sort of change it a little bit." So yeah, I think developing these mash bills, sure, he did a lot of them. He will tell you most of them did not work. I mean, they were fine, but they were nothing special. We have a sensory lab downstairs that we don't just keep our bottles in. We keep bottles from every single other distillery, even wineries, tequila, scotch, rum, crazy things, orange juice, I don't know, all sorts of stuff down there to see what's on the market. Because, you look, I don't know, like a random bottle. Henry McKenna, Heaven Hill has cornered the market on Henry McKenna. We don't want to make Henry McKenna, right? We don't want to make Blanton's. We don't want to make George T. Stagg. It already exists. We want to make Rabbit Hole. So we look at other people and what they do and try and learn from other people, but we also try and do things our own way. And that all stems from the way Cave is.
Thank you.
Any other question? No, you're very welcome. Thank you. That was a softball question. It really set me up great. You got to use all my marketing jargon. It's perfect. All right, so let's have another drink. What do you say? So we did Cave Hill, started with Cave Hill, and just kind of recapping on Cave Hill, 70% corn, 10% each of malted wheat, malted barley, and honey malted barley. This one for me starts very spicy. Lots of grain, lots of barrel spice up front. Grain starts to give you some of the green apple and pear in the mid palate there from those esters, and then the finish, lots of vanilla, lots of honey from that honey malt. High Gold, the high rye. By the way, Cave Hill is it's actually named after a cemetery here in Louisville called Cave Hill Cemetery. It's where all the old distillers are buried. And next time you come to Louisville, go tour Cave Hill. You can actually do tours where they'll take you around and show you all the distillers that are buried there. Muhammad Ali is buried there. Colonel Sanders is buried there. I have a lot of relatives that are buried there too. My grandfather's like 30 feet from Colonel Sanders. It's kind of funny. But High Gold is named after one guy, whereas Cave Hill is named after a whole bunch of people. High Gold, his name was Christian High Gold. He was a German immigrant to the city of Louisville. He was a stonemason, and he got to Louisville about 1852. And he came to Louisville at a time when a party called the Know Nothings were in power, very anti-immigrant. He did a lot of social work in Louisville and built a lot of the beautiful molding of the churches here, the steps of the original courthouse. He really embraced the American ideals. His house, the facade of which still stands, has these scenes like George Washington, James Buchanan. So he loved America, even though he was from Germany. Cave, who likes to say there's not a lot of guys running around Kentucky named Cave making bourbon. It's obviously an immigrant name. He moved to Louisville when he was 11 from Iran in 1979, which was a great time to get out of Iran. He, later in life, when he moved to Louisville, I think he really resonated with that story, Christian. So we wanted to name a bottle after him. This is also 70% corn and 30% malt, like Cave Hill, but this is 25% malted rye and 5% malted barley. The malted rye comes from Germany because Christian High Gold was German. So this is a high rye, we call a high rye double malt. Even though this is a high rye bourbon, I don't feel like it acts like one right away. It's pretty soft. Where if Cave Hill is like the Cabernet, this is like the Pinot Noir. It's a little more reserved, a little more nuanced at first. Toasted coconut, orange peel. The front of the palate, kind of opposite from Cave Hill. It's very soft, very sweet. The mid palate, maybe more like orange peel and some green apple. But the finish, that's where it reminds you that it has rye grain in there, even though it's malted rye. It's like right here in what we call the Kentucky hug. That's how you know it's working, right here in the chest. That is where some things like white pepper, maybe a little bit of black pepper, maybe just like a touch of a green note in there, just a touch of like that kind of classic sort of mint dill, maybe more on the mint side. And then a little bit of black tea kind of rounds it out. I've been a High Gold guy lately. I really, really have been drinking a lot of High Gold. This is also 95 proof, by the way, also 95 proof. I think it's really interesting doing Cave Hill and High Gold right next to each other because on paper they look so similar, like the ratio of grains are the same, the proof is the same, average age on these are about the same. The back of the label says it over
Did he freeze on just my end or everybody's? Oh, I'm currently offline. Fantastic.
This is 95.5. Hey, Vadim's back, I think. It's I think he just
He
joined
is.
again.
Sorry about that.
I can tell when you leave and go. Very subtle. This is a 95.5 rye. So just like Larry Ebersold's classic MGP Rise 95.5. But I don't feel like this acts like your normal 95.5. It's not super dill and mint right away. I feel like even though this is our most savory whiskey, it's still pretty soft and sweet. It's got a lot of like rose water, very floral, lots of, I think there's like this pipe tobacco thing, and just on the edge of the nose. The palate is really interesting on this. It really is interesting. It is, I mean, it's super sweet, lots of butterscotch. You start to get a little bit more of those citrusy notes and floral notes. The rye grain in Boxer Grill is not the same rye grain that's in High Gold. It's not the German malted rye. It is Canadian rye. So it's North American rye. That North American rye tends to be just a little bit softer. It will give you a few green notes, but it's really very heavy on those floral and tobacco notes. And I think the black tea is really strong on this one. That was like kind of my first clue about our yeast, because tea sorts of shows up in everything. It's not just the barrel. Our yeast really adds quite a bit of tea notes in our whiskeys. Full disclosure, I am a rye guy. Even though I'm from Louisville and from Kentucky, I love rye whiskey. Love rye whiskey. In fact, I named my dog Sazerac. That's how much I love rye whiskey. And he is the worst. Sazerac is absolutely the worst. He's the worst dog. Pretty interesting, right? Pretty interesting for a 95.5. And of course, we call this one Boxer Grail because, you know, some of the greatest boxers of all time, they have come from Louisville. So this city is like a boxer's grail. So we wanted to name that. And if you want me to get really, really corny marketing, it takes a strong stance and is worthy of a title. Makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up when I say things like that. It's terrible. All right, we're going to do something fun now. You're going to love this. If you got any rye left in that glass, or even if it's an empty glass, doesn't matter. Go ahead and do what I call get a snoot full of it. Really, really dig in there. Get a nice big smell of it. Now, go straight to the gin. This is smoked gin. If you got this gin, go straight to this and smell it. And it is straight up going to smell, surprise, surprise, like a gin. It's going to smell like juniper berries, Christmas trees. We're going to do something fun. So smell like your wrist or the back of your hand. You're basically smelling yourself. You're using your own pH to reset your sense of smell. Now smell the gin again and see how sweet it is. See how sweet it gets. We take a London dry gin and we finish it in the Boxer Grail rye barrels for about 6 months. So what you just did, you basically nose blinded yourself to that barrel, went and smelled the gin, and it smelled like the London dry gin it is. And then when you kind of reset your sense of smell and you went back, now all of a sudden you realize how much that barrel changes it. You are not going to believe me until you try this. It tastes like limoncello and Earl Grey tea. This is a really surprising drink. How good is that? Isn't that neat? And let me put it this way. This is an 89 proof cocktail spirit. Let's be honest. It's a gin. It's a cocktail spirit, right? That you can drink at room temperature, just neat. How many times can you do that, right? My wife, I will tell you this, my wife, she is a Moscato drinker. She drinks sweet wine. This is all I can get her to drink. She loves this gin. She loves this gin. She does it with club soda and an orange slice. Amazing. It's delicious. It's also incredibly dangerous. She's not drinking it now. She's pregnant, so she's not drinking anything fun right now. But I had back surgery a couple years ago, and she had to mow the lawn for me all summer. And my job was to make her the drink. So the club soda and the orange slice, the gin, we call it a Rabbit Ricky. And she would mow a little bit, come in, take a drink, go out and mow. And I would notice about like 20 minutes in that she's out there like stumbling all over the place, the lines are getting kind of wonky. And I realized I was making it like it was making it for me. I'm a much bigger person than my wife is. So we had to pull back on the gin a little bit on that one. She was getting a little happy out there in the yard. She does. She loves it. And I am not a gin drinker, and I love this gin. And especially doing with the rye like that. Even if you go back to the Boxer Grill rye after kind of trying the gin, you get, I think, exposed more to the grain than you do the barrel, right? Yeah, the color, absolutely. That's why it's got that beautiful, almost like Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio kind of color to it, because it sits in that rye barrel for about 6 months.
Going back to
Yeah,
the box trail,
Yeah.
I get a sweeter note to it than I do a normal 95.5. It reminds me a little bit of like a Maryland or Pennsylvania style rye with that in there. And I'm just wondering because I know they do something different in Maryland and Pennsylvania to get that kind of thing. Without mentioning other brands, we've done other brands from those areas.
No, it's okay.
What do you attribute that sort of sweetness to that you guys are able to achieve that sort of others don't with the same mash bill?
The grain source really plays a big key in that. So, oh gosh, what is the name of that? Mahunganala rye, however you say that, like that Pennsylvania sort of style rye, where they're sourcing grain most of the time it's North American rye. Whereas like LDI, MGP, the 95.5 ryes that you're kind of associate with that mash bill, generally those are European rye grain. European rye tends to be much more in that green, spicy, minty sort of flavor wheel, whereas Canadian or North American rye, it will still have some of those characteristics, the spicy mintiness, but it's a little more reserved, and it tends to be a little bit more on the floral, tobacco-y sort of side. I think when you kind of put that floral note into like an American whiskey, especially with the barrels that we're using, the butterscotch is really strong. I mean, you think about those Kelvin barrels, they are toasted and charred. The lignin count, the vanillin, the furfural that comes out of there, giving some more of those banana caramelly sort of flavors. I think that translates really well to the gin, into the rye, and even the gin. I think that's why the gin itself becomes so much sweeter, because of those barrels that it's aged in.
And I'm sorry, I must have spaced and missed it. So the rye in the box grill is the same German rye in the high gold, or
different?
Oh, sorry.
Different, yeah. They come from different places. Yeah, the rye in Boxer Grill is Canadian rye. The malted rye in high gold is from Germany. I don't know why I point this for Canada and this way for Germany. It just like, I don't know. Like I'm looking at a map, I guess. I don't know. I always do that.
It works. It works. I would have gone that way for Germany, but it works.
I have a question. So am I hearing this right? You guys are using the same yeast for all of these. So you're using the same yeast for the rye as you are for the bourbon, which is very unique in, the community. How can you pull that off? Because that's the reason so many people change it for that, because they're like, rye is so difficult, it's so much more finicky, that's why we have to do these things. I'm impressed. Like, I'm just curious, the experimentation that was behind that.
So we never really, and this kind of goes back to when I was talking earlier about, I'm the guy that's sort of really diving into our yeast, which I am not the chemistry guy in this company. Like, I am the guy who likes to talk about the experience and the drinking of it and stuff. And I've really learned a lot through my 15 years in this career about chemistry, but I've learned the most in the past, 6 or 7 months. I really kind of dove into the yeast strain. We didn't pick a yeast that was very strong, very aggressive in its flavor development. I mean, you can make it aggressive depending on how you cook it, but we knew with our low fermentation, it wasn't going to be producing the amount of congeners off the ester development, stuff like that in the fermentation that would produce super strong spicy flavors, right? We really wanted our grains and our barrels to do most of the talking. It's kind of like that old stupid adage of like too many cooks in the kitchen or whatever. In this sense, I think it makes kind of sense, right? Is that you have the yeast adding so much flavor, and you got the barrels adding so much flavor, and you got the grains, kind of these specialty grains we have is adding so much flavor that it'll get muddled in there, and you kind of want to pull back and have balance a little bit. So our yeast is really responsible for more kind of subtle, smoother flavors in there. That's why we don't really attribute any of our spice coming from that yeast, because it's really not. Our yeast is really giving things like, from what I've gotten so far, like the tea notes that are in this, and from some of the fruit flavors and those esters are coming from that yeast. that conversion of like the sugars to the ethanol. I don't know, does that kind of help answer along? And I wish I could get deeper into it. I'm just not there yet with our specific yeast. I'm hoping by this time next year, I'm like the yeast master of Rabbit Hole, and they can add that to my title. But
No,
although
that was
Yeast Master sounds really gross.
that was great. And you know, I'm someone else here, because I'm sure we have people like I correct myself. I know we have people in the group who are smarter than I am on the call.
I hear you.
But if my memory serves me, most people who do rise, they actually crank up that fermentation temperature. And also not just for the fact of they need to, but also to speed it up. So I think that maybe it's the combination of the yeast and that you guys keep that lower fermentation temperature that might just be that really unique combination that makes it work so well. But I mean, I'm super impressed and I'm loving this. So great job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, rye is very tricky, right? Rye, I mean, the big thing with rye, first of all, rye grain is expensive. Now, this rye whiskey is kind of like one of our lowest price points, because really we're using so much more malt than the others. That kind of drives the price up a little bit on the others. And this one, you know, this rye only has 5% malt in it. But also rye is very tricky in terms of fermentation. It produces less alcohol, and also it foams like crazy. It foams up like crazy over the sides of the tank. If any of you all remember a guy named Dave Pickerel. So Dave Pickerel, he was at Maker's Mark for a long time. He kind of put Whistle Pig on the map. His last thing before he died was Blackened. That Metallica kind of owned sort of thing with Rob Dietrich. He really went a long way to making rye easier for people. And it comes down to such simple things. Like you all saw the distiller down there, Reneel, kind of with the hose, making sure that the last of that mash kind of got down there at the end before he started cleaning it out. They do that constantly, especially when we're doing like a high rye or the rye whiskey, because you have to kind of spray the edges, because that mash will start to creep up the side, and then it gives something for the bubbles to leach onto, and it overflows the tank. It's as simple as that, keeping water on the top of it and spraying those bubbles down. So, I mean, I don't know. I like to really get nerdy about things, really dive into the innovation and chemistry when I can, but sometimes it just comes down to the guy with the water hose. You know, I mean, that's really what it's all about. It kind of puts it in perspective a little bit. So now we're going to go on to our last one. I know I keep seeing things come in the chat. Honestly, I'm really far from my phone right now. So if you keep asking something, I'm missing it, just feel free to unmute yourself. I'll go back through the chat here in a minute and I'll put my face real close to the screen so you can enjoy that and go through the chat, see if I missed anything. But the last one we're going to do is Derringer. Now, first of all, this is a sherry finished bourbon. If you remember earlier when I had that mishap and I muted myself, like a genius, I was trying to talk about those Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. This is a wheated bourbon. The mash bill on this is 68% corn, 18% wheat, 14% malted barley, aged first in charred new American oak, just like everything else. Level 4 on that one instead of level 3. And then it's finished for about 6 to 9 months into the sherry casks from Spain, Pedro Jimenez sherry casks, for about that 6, sometimes as much as 9, sometimes as little as 3, but generally around 6 months. If you smell this, the nose on it, it is the sherry right away. Tons of like dried fruit, dark flavors. Even if you kind of pull the glass away, you kind of get bourbon again, like the wheated bourbon. But when you taste this, you're going to get lots of oak up front, very soft caramel and butterscotch. And then you hit this this big kind of flavor of dark chocolate. And that's when the bourbon barrel ends and the sherry cask sort of begins. It kind of comes back with dark, fruit, dark chocolate, almond, marzipan. Really, really nice drink on this one. And then the name of this one, Derringer, we spell it like the pistol, but we pronounce it like the pistol. It's spelled Dare Ringer. Honestly, this one is named after the biggest influence in Cave's life, which is Heather, the Louisville native. She dared him to open a bourbon distillery, so that's why it's Dare. And then Ringer, she's the ringer. She's in his corner. She is the one cheering him on, being the Kentucky influence, the muse. This one is all about the love story. He was a Scotch drinker before he met Heather. He loved sherried scotches. And then when he met Heather, became a bourbon distiller. He wanted to finish a bourbon, something that she introduced him to, in a sherry cask, just like Scotch. So that's kind of the marriage between two parts of his life. Ooh, that is nice. That is nice. All right. Now I am seeing all sorts of chats come in here. Ooh, the cigars. I see somebody talking about the cigars. Very nice. Yeah. The cigars are great. Diesel does them for us. They age. One of them, they're called the Whiskey Roast series. One of them is the wrappers aged in K-fill barrels. The other one, the wrappers aged in the sherry casks. That's really good. Oh boy. Yeah, the sherry casks, the Pedro Menez barrels themselves, they come from Spain. They actually source the wood in Ohio. So the oak comes from Ohio. They send that to Montilla, Spain. It's called Casnolia is the name of the cooperage. They're family owned and operated. They build the casks. They sell them to a winery that makes the Pedro Menez sherry. They takes about 2 to 4 years to age that sherry. Then they send us the empty casks all the way back here to the U.S. We fill it with that wheated bourbon. All right. Let's just see. I'm just making sure I haven't missed any big. Boxer Grill MSRP looks like about 50. Yeah, about 49. So yeah, MSRPs on these generally. These two are line price of K-fill and High Gold are usually by 59, 60, somewhere around there. Boxer Grill and Bespoke are line price. So those are usually like $49.99. And then Derringer, that's our highest price point. That one's usually around 75, 79. Monongahela, thank you. I like that somebody spelled that out for me. Thank you very much. Who was that? Craig? You're the best.
Craig.
My old man speaks Pittsburghese.
So what's the production on the Derringer or Derringer?
So are you talking about the
bottles, barrels?
Yeah. So right now that one comprises about 20% of our production. It fluctuates. Last year, it really caught on. It exploded. In fact, we hit allocation issues with it at the end of last year, and even kind of moving into this year. There's like a liquor store right behind us called Evergreen that ran out of it. They couldn't get it because on that, but it got very popular, and so people started buying it out like crazy. We've really stepped up production on that. I think really we're hitting more like 25, 28% production on that this year. So we've really stepped that up to kind of meet demand. Somebody just asked about the mash bill of it. So mash bill on that, mash bill is on every single bottle except for Derringer. That's the only thing that we sourced. We contract distilled everything else at a Northern Kentucky distillery until we opened this distillery. So we're making it all now, even the Derringer. But that one, we sourced that originally from Wyoming Whiskey, who made a great wheated bourbon. It was 68% corn, 18% wheat, 14% malted barley. The reason we started doing that was because we needed something a little older. That generally is a little bit older than these because you can't put like a 2-year-old bourbon into Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. It'll just ruin it. The bourbon won't be able to stand up to it. We need something a little closer to 4.5. And so we started sourcing that then. We're making it now. We've cheated the numbers a little bit for our production to match the 70% corn. So it says 68% corn, it's 70% corn. That way it matches our other productions, makes that easier for the distillers. So we don't have that mash bill on the label right now because there's no good way for us to put that honestly and authentically on there. Also, the TTV wouldn't allow it. Once that's completely ours, which would be in about a year and a half, you'll see that mash bill show up on there. Have not noticed the difference between the stills. Here's something really genius. Cave actually went to Vendome and basically ordered the still and said, I need it a year from now. And he knew the dimensions of his still. And so Larry and him found a distillery in Kentucky that had a very similar size still. It's a little taller, but same diameter, which is really what matters. And so made it out of there. It's one of the few things I can't say out loud is the name of that distillery, because when you contract distill, they make you sign non-disclosure. But it's a Northern Kentucky distillery, the one that you're thinking of. That's absolutely the one that it is. And then it is PX Sherry. Yeah, still PX Sherry. We've got all sorts of different barrels floating around this distillery there. We're working on other finishes. We've got tequila barrels, Madeira barrels, our Armagnac barrels, cognac barrels, French oak barrels, more Mizunara, all sorts of stuff rolling around here, trying to port wine. I think there's some port wine barrels back there that we're really kind of experimenting with right now.
I got another question for you. So
Yes.
on the PX barrels, which are phenomenal, and I'm loving this Derringer, like I'm going to go buy a bottle this weekend. Are you guys, when you bring those over, are you shipping them whole, or are you having those broken down and then recoupering them, or? Okay.
They come over whole, yeah. And I mean, Castalia, so, we believe this much in Castalia. You can see here, what's my camera right there. So this little lion right here, that's Kelvin Cooperage. That's their seal. When you look at the Derringer, we don't put Castalia on there, even though we use, or we don't put Kelvin on there. We use Kelvin barrels for the first barrel, but we put Castalia because we really, really believe in them so much. They're such great artisans. We very rarely have an issue with those barrels when they come over. Any problems with them, any sort of issues with the barreling, it just never really happens. It's kind of amazing. We do have a plan for cast strength Derringer, a single barrel. So right now we're doing single barrel high gold for this year. And when I say year, I mean fiscal. So are we in June? We are in June. This is the last month of our fiscal. Next month begins our new fiscal, and we're going to start doing a new single barrel each quarter. So next quarter, we're going to go to Boxer Grail, I believe. Derringer is a few quarters behind that, a couple quarters behind that. I will tell you, and I'm going to be very honest with you, I have done quite a few samplings. I'm part of the sensory crew here, the sensory team at Rabbit Hole. I've done quite a few samplings on cask strength Derringer. Let me be very honest with you. I like Derringer at 93 proof. Having it at 104, it's very, very, very hot. It's very, very hot. Some people like that. I think I'm in the minority of the sensory crew. We're very collaborative here. We all kind of have a say in this. I'm sort of in the minority. Everyone else is kind of crazy about it. It's really hot for me. It's really hot for me. Yeah, high gold at barrel strength is awesome. Especially, I pulled one, a couple weeks ago. It was at 98 or 99 proof. It was great. It was great at 99 proof. But I think it just depends. I mean, maybe we just haven't found that Derringer barrel that is the best. And that's really tricky when you're doing the secondary finishes, right? It's hard to call it single barrel because it's one single barrel of a bourbon barrel and then into a single barrel of, that sherry finish. It changes almost like a double. I mean, it's a double barrel. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the reason I'm not into it as much. I'm not sure. So we'll see.
You said you're going to Boxer Grail. You're going to do a cast strength Boxer Grail?
Yeah, Boxer
single
Grail.
barrels. How many bottles are we talking? It's going to be wide distribution. It's going to be distillery only.
It won't be wide distribution. It won't be distillery only. It won't be wide distribution though. We're really only looking to do. We only really have the stock to do about 10 of them a quarter. So we just finished up doing 10 high gold. So we're going to do 10 of the 10 of the Boxer Grail, and then I think it's going to be high gold again, and then I think Derringer and then Cave Hill, but I might have those switched. Just 10 each. This year we just did Kentucky markets. I think we're going to push some of those out into other markets the next year, but with just 40 barrels, it's very tough. We're looking in like 2 or 3 years to have more like hundreds of barrels available for single barrel. It's just tough when you're just starting out. You just don't have the stock for it. So I will say,
Los Angeles is a really good place to release them.
Los Angeles is a great place. Man, you put me in a corner here. I can't. It's not even that I can't. I just don't want to right now because of a couple reasons. Say where we're going in the next couple quarters, but you'll be happy. You'll be happy. But I will say, if anybody wants to make the flight or the drive on Monday, we are releasing the very first of our single barrels, and it is high gold. Fred Minnick, of course, is an excellent bourbon writer. He has, picked our first barrel. I can't pick in that poll. I can't do it. I'm so sorry. It's so hard for me to do. It's like picking one of my children. But he picked the first barrel of high gold, and we're releasing it on Monday, which is June 14th, which is National Bourbon Day, which coincidentally is my birthday. It's a total coincidence. My birthday is on National Bourbon Day. It's like my parents knew. So we're releasing the first one, and it's first come, first serve, and it's only 138 bottles. That's it. So if you find yourself on the way to Louisville, come. Happy fucking birthday. Thank you. They're awesome labels too. You can look them up. I think I just posted something on my Instagram about it. There's all sorts of whiskey raters that are really neat little blog about it, or a little article about it on their forum the other day. And it shows they're all Alice in Wonderland I hear it's crystal glass. No, it's not crystal glass. It's just it's these bottles just kind of squat, but the labels are amazing. They're amazing. It's not crystal glass. No. What other questions y'all got for me?
I totally spaced on our tradition, and Jordan didn't remind me as he always does. But I hope you all still have something in your glass. You haven't finished everything. Please take a moment, pour a little bit into your glass. And I want to raise it and say thank you to Adam for being here tonight. Thank you to Rabbit Hole. Thank you for this wonderful experience. This has been absolutely delicious and educational and really fun. I think we all enjoyed it. Let me get everyone. I don't know who's the one using the security camera, but everyone raise a glass, smile at your camera, say cheers. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is, if you all can't tell, this is like one of my favorite things to do in my job. It's just to talk to other bourbon nerds. I love it. I love it. It's so much fun.
Oh, we are that for sure. So thank you very much, Adam. We appreciate it. And as I mentioned in the chat, you probably didn't see it in the very beginning, but I love live tours. It's great. You've got that down to a wonderful execution. You're management of the selfie stick and the camera. You're fantastic. So kudos.
Thank you so much. I love doing them. I love doing these tours. I mean, it's just so much fun for me. And I feel like people who don't have fun in this industry, they got to find another job. I don't know how you don't have fun doing this, right? It's amazing. It's so much fun.
So you mentioned Fred Minnick. We're a big fan, Bourbon, the Rise and Fall. We advocate that book, and all of our welcome message to our members. I think it's a great resource. I have it on audio, and I've listened to it a couple times. It's great. Also, since you're in Louisville, Stave and Thief Society.
Yeah, they're great. I just finished my executive bourbon steward the other day. I just had never done it. It's so much fun. So much fun. It's a great class. Great class.
I got mine. I've been there, done that.
Yeah, so, that is an amazing program. Moonshine University, they're phenomenal. They're just great.
Yeah, so we like it. Also, the Brown Hotel, when people on our Facebook group ask about, where to go and where to stay in Louisville, the Brown Hotel, getting the hot brown, and next thing you know, you're just in heaven.
The hot brown is amazing. The hot brown is one of those things that when you have it for the first time, you're going to spend the next year of your life trying to cook the perfect hot brown, which when it's in the middle of the year, it's really hard to find smoked turkey. It's not around Thanksgiving. But yeah, the hot brown is amazing. And I always say this too, they have an amazing bar. They make a great old fashioned, but if you walk just a couple blocks away and you go to the Seelbach, you go to the Rathskeller, which is the bourbon cellar underneath. It's where F. Fitzgerald kind of the beginning of Great Gatsby on, and they have a drink called Seelbach, and it's champagne, bourbon, and a sugar cube. Oof, that is good. Wow. How do you spell what? How do you spell Seelbach? Seelbach, and Rathskeller is Rathskellar. You got that right. I hope that's what you're asking me to spell. F. Scott Fitzgerald. I can't spell that. I'm not going to spell that. So you're welcome.
Adam, I have a question about the gin, because I normally am not a gin fan, and that was fantastic. So I went looking for it online, and I'm finding a lot of places that have a rye barrel finished gin, but it's a different label, different bottle. Is it the same thing or not? Same
thing. Same exact thing. Yeah. So they originally used to be like this. And in fact, so it used to be this. This is what we started with right here, were these three bottles. And they didn't even have these names. It wasn't Cave Hill, Boxer Grill, and Derringer. It was just 4-grain straight bourbon, rye, straight rye whiskey, straight rye Kentucky whiskey, and then bourbon finished in Pedro and sherry casks. We wanted to give them very Louisville names, give them identities. But then we released this. And so we expanded those names. This is really, it kind of was coincidental, but we released this and then named all the bottles. The original gin had a blue label on it. We also felt like it needed its own sort of identity. So we moved it out of the bottles that looked just like this, and it just said barrel, rye barrel finished gin, like that. And we named it Bespoke. bespoke barrel finished gin. And the reason we named it bespoke is because we have taken this raw sort of spirit. So we don't make the gin. That's not a gin still back there. Kaveh has said to me repeatedly, we're not making freaking gin. He uses those words, right? I'm not a gin distillery. I'm a bourbon distillery, but he likes gin. He likes gin. And so he said, let's take a gin from G&J, which is the oldest gin distillery in London. And then we get it. They sent it to us. I think it's at 195 proof. It's terrible. It's terrible at that strength, but it's cheaper to ship that way. It's less water weight. We bring it in. We're able to add Louisville water to it. And then we age it in those rye barrels for about 6 months. And we call it bespoke gin because it's bespoke tailored for the whiskey drinker. Right? So that's, 195 proof. It is. I will never recommend you drinking 195 proof gin. Oof, terrible. But yeah, I mean, the bottle is gorgeous. And it was cool in the other bottle too. We just really felt like it needed its own sort of identity. And if you even look, I don't know if you can see that pattern on the bottle. It's like a herringbone pattern, like a bespoke tailored suit. So
it's a beautiful bottle.
Very,
and it was a
very
wonderful
design
expression.
forward here at Rabbit
I was
Hole.
surprised. I was really surprised, Adam, by that gin. It has
A lot
such
of
an
people
amazing
are.
nose. It almost has this like very perfumey, very, all this kind of stuff. I kind of go, oh, it'd be great, a little here, a little there. I'm happy to go.
Yeah,
Don't
that
want to
one
get
is
pulled over and
really
for
surprising.
speeding, but hey.
Reverse osmosis. Yeah, absolutely. So it softens. We soften it. Louisville typically has very hard water. We Louisvillians are very proud of our water. If you've ever been to Louisville, we're like, go ahead, just take it out of the tap. It's great water. Here at Rabbit Hole, we use Louisville Metro water. That's how great the water is. But we do soften it. We run it through reverse osmosis with a kind of a rudimentary filter at the top too, just in case. But yeah, we do run it through that. But yeah, I mean, it's Louisville water is amazing. It's amazing. What else can I answer? Don't be shy.
You can take a guess at what you think the favorite whiskey of tonight was, and I apologize that I put favorite bourbon in the poll, and one of them is a rye. Favorite whiskey of the night.
I'm so offended. I'm triggered. No. Let's see. What do I think is the best one? I don't know. Every group is so different. I'm gonna say Derringer. Was it Derringer?
Final answer.
Final answer. It's Derringer. Hey, look at that. But not too bad. Look at that. 29% high gold, 8% cave hill. You know what's so crazy is that I did another one of these Tuesday, and it was like almost the opposite of this. It was Derringer was the least favorite. Cave Hill was overwhelmingly, it was so high, and it was just like a hand count, so I don't know the actual percentage, but everybody went crazy about Cave Hill. High gold was like the lowest of everything. It was crazy. Every group is so different, and that's why we make such distinct products. Everything is so different from everything else, right? Not all groups have our distinguished palate.
I have gone back now and tasted them in different orders, and honestly, they taste totally different. Really, I feel like now I'm gonna have to save what I have and drink them at a completely different time, because just night and day different how they tasted the first time I tasted them to now when I go back. It's insane.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy how much that'll change it? I mean, wine, beer, spirits, they're all so susceptible to like outside stimuli, right? And if you change around the order, so I think earlier, Vadim was kind of saying like, oh, I wouldn't have picked that order. I didn't expect that was that order. I do this order because I think it tells the story of Rabbit Hole. It's not really for any reason in terms of taste, other than I don't want to put the gin at the end. And then like the gin always goes after rye for me, so I don't want to put the rye at the end. So, I never want to put the gin at the end. It always seems kind of weird to me. But I feel like this tells the story the best. But you can really kind of mess with yourself sort of when you put these out of order. For instance, if you do high gold before cave hill, high gold will tend to almost taste a little stronger than cave hill because you're trying that first, right? And then you go back and you do it again. And I still think that cave hill is a little bit more aggressive in terms of flavor delivery. But sometimes you put high gold before it, it'll almost smooth it out a little bit. It'll make it a little softer. So yeah, no, you're like right on with that. And I think that's really fun to do. I do it in this order for me. It works for me, but I always tell you, if you have samples left over, or if you go and buy the bottles and do it again for friends, I mean, do it in a different order. It's really amazing to kind of try it out that way.
Okay, so are you open for tours right now?
Not right now. So Brand Homes, or our hospitality department, they are opening. I think the first day that they're finally opening is June 22nd. We have been closed since March 16th of 2020. It's so crazy. It's so crazy to think it's been this long that we've been closed, right? And so we are opening June 22nd for our public tours again. I think everything is sold out for like the first month. That's what they're telling me, which is just amazing. I love that. Everything's starting to kind of open up again here in Louisville. Everyone's getting more comfortable. More distilleries are opening. Retail isn't technically open, but if we see somebody walking by and they're like peering in the glass out of retail, we'll like let them in and buy some bottles. Next Monday, we are kind of opening briefly to, do the single barrel launch, that first single barrel launch that Fred picked for us. Those bottles, by the way, it's kind of a cool side note. They all the proceeds are going to a fund that is giving all the money away, 100% of them, to a charity that's funding local restaurant and bar workers here in the Nulu area here in Louisville. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, so June 22nd is when they're opening this bar up here. They're not opening this up to the public quite yet. They're kind of slow rolling that a little bit. I think in maybe 2 months or so, they'll open it up to where, you can just come up to the bar and grab a drink. It's a really great cocktail bar to hang out in. So yeah, we're really excited to get this place open again.
So you think you'll be open in October, like say mid-October?
Yeah,
For
unless there's like
and
a
things.
second, unless there's like a second pandemic or something. So you know what I mean? You never know what's gonna happen next. You never know what person is gonna eat a rancid raccoon in Alaska or something. I don't know. So you never know what's gonna happen. But yeah, we are gonna be open. I will say this though. So a big part of my role is hanging out with bourbon groups. So, I mean, if you just find yourself coming into town and you want to do a public tour, absolutely. Let me know. We'll grab a drink together. I'll just meet you up here. We'll grab a drink together. But if this group, wants to kind of start funding expeditions to come out to Louisville, next time you find like, a group you all coming into Louisville or something, just send me an email. Vadim can give you my email, but I'll just say it. It's very easy. It's adam@rabbitholedistillery.com. Very easy email. Just send me a message. We'll work something out. I would love to kind of host the group, maybe 15 of you at a time, something like that. Walk around the distillery and have some drinks and just hang out. Road trip.
Awesome, because we have a birthday coming up in mid-October, and the idea is to go to Louisville and have some drinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
all right,
fingers crossed, everything's open.
I think at that point everything will just like be really open. But I will say, my wife is expecting our first child in about, I think we're 2 months from today, but I don't think she's lasting that long. I think she's gonna go early. But technically, I might still be out on paternity leave to the end of October. But like, no worries. Like, I will still have my laptop. I'll be able to answer emails, and I'll make sure that you all are taken care of. Baby Boxer Grail. I am not naming my child Boxer Grail. That is, man, that kid would get beaten up every day in elementary school with a name like Boxer Grail. We're taking bets on my daughter's birthday. It's as late as possible. That's my bet, as late as possible.
So Adam, I know that as far as modern bourbon brands, you guys have been pretty involved in the social networking side of things, Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. Could you talk about that a little bit in terms of like, I actually run like my Instagram page is like clothes and stuff like that. And so I've actually gotten the Cave Hill and the High Gold from Shadon. And that was my first introduction to Rabbit Hole. And I mean, I was like, dude, this stuff is great, and everything was really cool with her. She was very, very accommodating of like, kind of what I'm about, because I'm like, if I get it and I don't like it, I don't want to, and she's like, oh no, that's totally cool. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
So how does that play into like your kind of marketing strategies and where do you see that taking you?
So, for us, I feel like this is the reason they put me in the role that I'm at, is because I am the guy that follows like all the bourbon Instagrams and listen to all the bourbon podcasts and watch all the bourbon and whiskey YouTube channels, right? And I'm in like 9 different groups in Louisville and a few outside of Louisville. But that is done. Like every brand does that. We all reach out to bourbon groups. And not that I don't love doing it, but for us, it's not just, we are a company that makes amazing bourbon, but we just happen to make bourbon. We're really a company that stands for things. We like to, we like to be stylish. We like to be innovative. We like to be collaborative. And a lot of those are not just shared by the whiskey community. A lot of those are shared with people that are into fashion, that are into art. I mean, we've talked about the art in this building. There's so much art in this building. People that are chefs. I mean, we're the official sponsors of the James Beard Foundation. So, I feel like I'm saying something terrible to a bourbon group, but why should bourbon groups have all the fun, right? Let's get some chefs in on the action. Let's get some sculptors in on the action, right? People that are in other sort of lines of their hobbies, they also enjoy to drink fine whiskey too. So we like to make sure that we're reaching out to those people. I am actually doing something kind of crazy next Thursday, I think, next Wednesday, something like that. I'm doing a podcast with some authors. They review like thrillers, and they reached out to me and they're like, "We love Rabbit Hole. Would you want to come on the podcast and just be a storyteller?" They're like, we've listened to you on a couple different things. You're a great storyteller. Would you just want to come on the podcast and tell stories? And I'm like, well, shit, yeah, absolutely. So, that's what it is. We like to kind of branch out. I think that you're going to see that continue. I mean, definitely with us, but probably with the rest of the industry too, because there's so much out there to expose people to a really not just fine whiskey, but a fine culture of whiskey too, right? Cave, before he was a bourbon distiller, like I said, he was a psychologist, but he also, he was really into arts. I mean, he's on the board for the Speed Art Museum, which is an amazing museum here in Louisville. He's on the board of the Louisville Orchestra. That's not because it's, he's making money doing that or anything. He's doing it because that's a passion for him, arts and culture. And so I think that sometimes I think about Rabbit Hole is an arts and culture company that just happens to make great bourbon, if that makes any sense. So that sort of thing will really continue with us because, I don't know if you saw some of the shots from like, a couple different Instagram influencers, big kind of fashion forward influencers that, they got a bottle of the Founders Collection, the Mizunara, and they're just like posing with this unbelievably amazing looking bottle, wearing like this crazy looking suit or whatever, because fashion is such a cool art form that I don't think is represented by any bourbon brand out there. No bourbon brand has frankly had the courage to go after that market. So why not? And
there is one, but it's not good. there is one, but it's not good. But it was really cool. And that's why I kind of set that up like, well, the only other brand I know that's reaching out to people like me isn't great. So I was like a little hesitant at first, having never tried your product. So she was totally cool. Like, yeah, try it. Tell us how you like it. If you don't like it, let us know. You're not obligated to do anything. I was like, that's awesome. I want to try it. And since then, I've killed my bottle of High Gold and bought another.
It worked.
Yeah, no, it worked out, and I was really happy to get to be able to post about it and say this stuff is good.
Yeah, and that's I even sent a bottle. There's this YouTube channel called Bourbon Blind or Blind Bourbon, something like that. And I reached out to them because that's a lot of my job. I'll kind of reach out to channels and be like, hey, can I send you a bottle, or you want to come to the distillery and hang out, like whatever. And I said, can I send you a bottle? And they responded with, listen, did you see our name? We taste it blind. We taste it blind. We don't look at the packaging. We don't look at the price. We don't look at the story. We don't care. We taste it blind. And I was like, that's fine. I'm going to send you this bottle. And they loved it. I sent them Derringer, I think. Some Derringer, and they were nuts about it. They were crazy about it. And I think that there were a few people in the marketing department that when they saw that I sent them the bottle, they got very nervous, as every brand will do, right? Every brand will do that. But we stand behind our products. And also, it's okay if you don't like one of our products. Like I kind of said earlier, we make a very distinct line. You know, we did a poll, and this one, the lowest rated one was K-Fill, right? Most people liked High Gold more than K-Fill, and Derringer more than everything. But like I said, I had a group the other day, and they were crazy about K-Fill. That's just, every palate is different, and that is okay. Like, that is absolutely fine. That is why we stand behind making such distinctive products.
Adam, I had a question about the Boxer Grail single barrel, and that's a Kentucky only release.
The Boxer Grail, I don't know about the Boxer Grail. The High Gold, the one that we're doing right now, that one is Kentucky only.
Okay.
I don't know about Boxer Grail. I'm not sure where that one is going.
And then you said Friend Minnick has a release or a barrel?
Yeah, he picked the very first one. The very first single barrel that we did, it was the very first barrel of High Gold. I think we gave him, oh man, it's been so long ago. I think 5 barrels, 6 barrels, and he picked one of them that he loved, and we put that in a bottle, and we're releasing that on Monday.
Oh, so
What are you doing with the other 4 barrels? Is David Donahue's next question.
It was.
The other 4 barrels went home with me. No, we one of those barrels we actually put back to kind of age a little bit more, because we all agreed like, it's a little too early on that one. The other ones we just kept in the rotation for the rest of the single barrel fix. We did 10 of them this year. Well, we have 10 of them scheduled. I'm doing like 2 more next week, and I think there's 1 more the week after that, and then that'll be the final one. And so they're all like Kentucky retailers, you know, Kroger, Total Wine, Costco, Justin's House of Bourbon. We did one private group, and it's a bourbon group called the Bourbon Mafia, because they helped fund the opening of the distillery. A lot of them were original investors, so we said, hey, no problem, we're going to do one for you. That was the only private group that we did, and the only non-retailer was Fred Minnick doing the one for charity, and then the Kentucky Bourbon Festival picked a barrel, but it's all going to be sold at this place in Louisville called Justin's House of Bourbon, which is amazing. That place is incredible. It's like a bourbon museum.
We do have resources to reach into Kentucky to source bottles. Not that we would ever talk about it on effing Facebook, because we do not want to be in restriction again. But
yeah, the Mizunara one though, it was gone quick. That one went really, really quick. I had that one for about a month, and
did you have
now I just got this. I had 1 bottle and it's gone.
Did you try it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, it was great. I loved it. Yeah. Both Box Grail and Mizunara. I helped kind of select the blend for that, and kind of put the tasting notes for it.
For both of those?
Yes.
Or for the
jealous. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Adam, I had a question, because I kind of based on, and you touched on it with the Bourbon Mafia, that they were original investors, is because I've not heard nor have I read that Cave had some sort of struggle to get money. You said that he went out, decided to do it, got his blessing from Heather, and then it sounds like money was thrown at him.
Yeah, absolutely. He just basically knocked on doors and got investors very easily.
Because the distillery is stunning. I mean, there is some work. There was a lot of work doing to the architectural design of it, and the pictures that I've seen, it is beautiful. I don't think there's anything else like that in Louisville that I'm aware of. So I know that's
stunning building.
A lot of time and money and effort, and then to have all the fermentation tanks and the ability to expand. That's the only place I've heard of or seen that is expanding at that rate is Bardstown.
Yeah, this was this building and everything in it, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like 17 to 19 million, something like that. But I mean, he really had no problem at all getting investors for it. I mean, people were in the late 2000s. You said you were building a bourbon distillery and you showed that you had a good plan. You had no problem getting money at all.
And now you guys you're not independent anymore, right? You're partnered with it.
Yeah, we partnered with Pernod. Yeah, so Pernod Ricard came in. They actually bought out all the investors. So all those people that invested, they made out handsomely, is like the most political way I could put it. They made out very well on that deal. They came in, they bought our investors out. So Pernod, we had a lot of people that were trying to kind of buy us out. And Kaveh just kept saying no, because he's like, I don't want to be bought out. I want to partner with somebody. This is a family owned and operated distillery. We want to keep operating like we're doing. We want somebody to come in and just give us money. That's all we want. We want people to come in and give us money so we can distribute across the country. Pernod fit that bill. They came in, they bought our distillery. The only thing they changed at all, the only thing they changed is they asked us how many warehouses we were building. We said 1, and they immediately said, let's order 2 more and build 1 a year for the next decade. So that's a nice deal. That's a nice deal, right? And they have been phenomenal. They have been an amazing partner. Alex Ricard, incredible human being. Kaveh, when they were kind of about to sign the deal, Kaveh and Michael, who is his cousin and is my boss, but he's the CMO. He was the second hire for Rabbit Hole. They flew out to Paris, and they didn't fly to like Pernod Ricard's, global headquarters or anything like that. They went to his house outside of Paris and had dinner with 40 members of his family and just hung out all night and did not talk business. Alex was like, we're not talking business tonight. We're going to drink some wine. We're going to drink some Rabbit Hole. We're going to have amazing food. You're going to play with my kids, like stuff like that. And then the next day is when they signed the deal. And that for Kaveh and Michael, that was like, that's perfect. We're a family. They're a family. It's an amazing partnership. They have been absolutely wonderful with us.
I think if we do a barrel pick, we want that experience. Can we?
Possible? Please make
you come. I tell you what, at that point, I will probably be like, yes, please watch my daughter. I'm good. It's been 7 straight months of crying to watch my daughter. Yes, you play with my daughter. Absolutely. Heck, you never know. I will tell you, I am the single barrel experience director. So when you come pick a barrel at Rabbit Hole, you get me. And so, we'll have a good time.
I like that.
Is the charity you guys are doing for money? Is that Ed Lee's charity, or is there a different one?
No, it's not Ed Lee's charity. I'm kind of kicking myself right now because I can't remember the name of it. I just can't remember the name of it right now off the top of my head. But it's just basically it's taking all the money and it's giving it to restaurants. So people who work in restaurants and people who work in bars. So basically all on-premise workers within like something like a 3-mile radius of Louisville, which is basically like Nulu in downtown Louisville.
Cool. So I didn't mean that. It wasn't trying to be a pop quiz. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I should know the name of the distillery or of the charity. I just, for whatever reason, I can't.
But you didn't. And on that note, we're gonna finish this seminar. That's it. No,
but tell the recording because then we get the real details.
Exactly. Adam, look, we want to thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. You are a great host. We really enjoyed the tour. You clearly have it down to a T, and we really appreciate you. We appreciate your time. Thank you for making this happen. By no means am I kicking anybody out, but I want to end the recording so we can just all relax.
Thank you, Adam.
And be free. So cheers to you. Cheers to everyone. Good night.